the doing things with ribbon, but the big thing for me was a Facebook post. I would do one a month on the anniversary of his passing. I just started at 1 month, and it just kept going through a year, and that was physically exhausting. It was, you probably read it in 5 minutes, but it felt like it took 10 hours to do, and it probably took 10 minutes to write. It was easy to write because it just poured right out of your heart. And I normally didn't think I was that kind of person, but that has helped immensely to write about it, and just to read people just sharing, and how many people are in the same boat. That helped a lot, to talk to people that had the same situation.
Hi, thank you so much. It is Patsheveland again, and I am here with Jay Pernu, who is a grieving dad, and I connected with him just through Facebook. I think it's just through Facebook interactions, and he had written a beautiful, poignant post not all that long ago, and so I just said, would you be interested in having me interview you? Because as you know, I just hit my screen. As you know, I am always so honored when a grieving parent will share their story with me. And as I just told Jay, I think it's so important for those who grieve to be able to share their stories, but also it is so incredibly healing for other people to hear those stories, especially if you are grieving the death of your child, to know that you're not alone out there. There's so many parents that are here, and they're willing to bring their energy to you, and together that's a healing process. So Jay, welcome so much.
Thanks for having me.
Great. So you wrote this beautiful post a while back, and it just, you are very eloquent in your writing. Now, I don't see a lot of it because I think that it probably comes in waves for you, as grief does and as healing does, right? But you wrote just a beautiful post, and you talked about going to the ball field and that type of thing. Could you just start out by sharing a little bit about your story and about your family, and just sharing what feels right for you this morning?
Well, I guess I'll start with my family. I have a wife, Vicki, and a daughter, Jenna, remaining. My daughter's 30. My son, Jayson, who passed away a little over a year ago, it was last May. He would be 26 or 28 this month. He was 26 when he passed away. He passed away from an overdose, opioid overdose. And I guess I'll go back to kind of where it started. He was a very good baseball player, very good pitcher in high school, all through his life actually. But and in between his junior and senior year, he hurt his arm just playing a pickup football game. So long story short, he missed his senior year, which just crushed him. And he did have surgery prior to his senior year, trying to possibly play, but it didn't work out for him. So he, kind of sat on the bench and watched, and had kind of a tough year at it. And shortly after that, he graduated. He went to a local college and was able to play some ball there, but he started changing quite a bit, and we didn't know what it was, if it was just a growth thing, or and we went through 2-3 years of not knowing what was going on, and ended up, he finally came out one day and said, "Dad, I'm hooked on opioids. I started back when I had my surgery on my shoulder, and that's kind of could kick it for a while. Then I came back, and so he kind of rode this roller coaster for a while. He'd be good, he'd be bad, he'd be, it was tough. And then it kind of progressively got worse. We kind of believed what we wanted to believe. We didn't know what to believe. When you're in that state, you're kind of a master manipulator. he was telling us things we wanted to hear, and we were both busy with our careers and trying to make a living. And towards the end, it was probably a 5-6 year struggle. My wife and I went to work out one morning. We work out early in the morning, like at 5, and we came home and we found him passed away. And like I said, a year ago, and it turned out it was an overdose. We kind of guessed that, but we just didn't know. It was just it was a tough 6 years of our life, 5-6 years of our life, and hasn't gotten much easier. But we know he's at peace, which is good, and that's where we stand today.
Yeah. And just in that whole, because when you have a 5 or 6 year process, and I'm speaking with some familiarity around this because my niece passed away 2 years ago, and hers was a long process, and you never knew, and you're just kind of waiting for that other shoe to drop, but then you get hope, and then it's just, that's the roller coaster. But then all of a sudden the reality hits when you come upon them and find that they have transitioned on. So my heart is just, I'm a registered nurse by background, and I worked in the work comp field for 25 years. And towards the latter, I've been gone there for 5 years, almost 6 years, but we really started working on the opioid epidemic within our own organization, because we know that is really kind of, I'd say, the gateway, because if you can't get a hold of the opioids and the doctors aren't able to prescribe anymore and that type of thing, what's the next thing? Is going out onto the streets and finding drugs such as heroin or something like that. And then now with the horrible things that are going on where people are just lacing it. I've known too many families that have experienced this, and yeah, it's just, it is absolutely tragic. So talk to me a little bit. So it's been a little over a year. I like to talk a little bit about kind of the differences in grieving in a family, because when I work with my clients, I encourage them to find support systems that aren't just necessarily the family. That's one support system. But what I found, and perhaps you've seen this too, is you go on kind of different trajectories. You may not be on a different path than your wife is, or that your daughter is. And so can you talk a little bit about what that's been like in the last year?
Yeah, and you're totally right. It's different paths. I don't know what Vicky's feeling. I don't know what Jenna's feeling. Luckily, we're not at each other's throats over all this. We give each other our space. And myself, my first thing was to read books, learn more about what took my son. How to grieve was a big one for me, and not so much how to grieve, but what to expect, which was very helpful for me. Read your book. Someone sent it to me. So I did a lot of reading, research. My wife probably isn't so much that way at all. She's more just motherly and kind of internalizes it, talks to whoever she can, which is a similarity for me. The thing that really helped me with grieving is talking to people. I know there's probably people that don't even want to hear me talk about it or are sick of it, but anyone who listens is a great help to me. People would always come to me and said, I just don't know what to say. I said, if you can just listen, that'll be great. And I kind of talked through it, and it was very helpful for me. And another thing I'm trying to do is put together something to raise opioid awareness, maybe start a nonprofit. I started right away, maybe 3-4 months into it, but I was just so exhausted and drained, and I still feel some of the after effects of it. The grief is such a physical thing. It is, at least for me. It's and it just hits you at times. You're just exhausted. You don't know why, but I think it's because your mind never turns off. But so To answer your question, a lot of things. I developed a ribbon with purple ribbon with Jayson's initials on it, and I've got that on can coolers and shirts, and it's kind of a bittersweet thing for me. You're kind of excited to get it out there, but it's like, well, why do I even have to do this? But I guess my thing is, the day he passed, I remember like it was yesterday. I was standing outside, in shock, and I just said something good has to come out of this, something good, and I've always remembered that. And hopefully, if I can help one kid, or if we can, it's not a personal journey, but if our family can, that would be great. So my daughter Jenna, she's a little more subdued. I don't know what she's thinking. I don't see her all the time, so I worry about her a lot, and I just hope she's finding ways to grieve health in a healthy manner.
Yeah. And you just touched on so many things that I've learned. My book was not, and I tell people this, all the information I got out of the book and put into those steps was really from grieving parents and families. You all are my wisdom keepers, and I just was able to take that information, gather the stories and the information, and put it into a program that, again, is not cookie cutter. It's just giving some thoughts and ideas, but you touched upon some things that I think are so critically important, is to understand that grief is exhausting. It's exhausting. It's hard work to grieve, very hard work. And people, I don't think, quite understand that until you're in it. But it's just, as you said, your mind is constantly going. And I think for a lot of guys, especially that I've connected with, you're doers. So that's part of it, is getting into action, right? And moving some of that energy through that way. And you touched upon that, developing the ribbons and thinking about the nonprofit and that type of thing. For anybody who's listening to this where this has not affected your family, I'll guarantee you at some point you are going to be affected by someone in your family is going to experience a deep loss if you don't. And I hope it doesn't happen to you, but unfortunately the statistics are out there that, it's happened to Jay, it's happened in my family, it's happened in so many people that I've touched base with. But just being able to sit and sit and meet the person who's grieving, like Jay, just meet him where he's at, right? We don't have to say something. Silence can be such a beautiful thing. Just sit and let me listen, and listen to me and let me talk. Which brings me to another point, is how important it is to honor your child, whatever that looks like. So you created the purple ribbons with Jayson's name and putting them on everything, but you're also taking a look at that bigger picture of, okay, his life was not going to be for naught. There's a purpose, there's a reason, and you want to go out there and help others. And that's where I know that I have seen with so many grieving parents and grieving spouses, but especially grieving parents, is when you can take some of that exhaustive energy, it is exhausting, but channel it into something that where you're helping another family, another person. That is where some true healing can begin. But healing, grief is always there. It's, to me, and I've shared this on many times, but I view it as, I'm a nurse, so I think about it as like in medical terms. If we were crushed by a horrible injury and just suffered something just severely traumatic physically to our body, oftentimes we're taken to the hospital and our physicians may put us in an induced coma. Grief does that, the emotional coma, to help when you first are stepping on this horrific path to start healing. And so then you're kind of numb for a while, right? For, like you said, you tried doing some of this even 3 to 4 months out. Might have been a little soon because your body's still doing some of that healing. And then as you start emotionally healing from this very traumatic event, then it's just baby steps. And I liken that to being in a hospital. And first you might just dangle your feet over the edge of the bed. Then they might get you up and stand you on your feet. Then they might get you into the chair and have you sit for, 15, 20 minutes. It's just building that strength again, to really, that's the healing process. So if we don't grieve and don't go through that process, then you may not find that healing. And I talk about my own parents, and I coined the phrase that it was failed grief for them because they never were able to talk about it. No one listened. They just pushed it under the rug because that's what you did back then, and never were able to honor their child. So you're doing all the steps. I mean, I think that your research and doing what you needed to do in those beginning phases is very helpful for the people that are listening here, because it takes action, right? It does take to, even though you don't want to a lot of times,
Yeah, I
so
agree.
yeah. So our families may be on a different path. And so what are some of the things now that really you have found helpful, whether it's physical things that you're doing or spiritual or mental, emotional? What are some of the things, Jay, that you've found over the last year that have been really helpful for you? And are there some things that were not so helpful?
Yeah, there's a lot of things that are helpful. The spiritual part, we actually found a church in the middle of all this while Jayson was still alive, which thank God. And it helped us a lot, and it still does. And I'm very thankful that we weren't pushed away from the church when this happened. We actually became stronger with it, which was awesome. I know it can go either way, and I'm glad that's the way it went. One thing that you mentioned was the baby steps. I don't think Vicky, my wife, was or is as good as that. She kind of put grief by the side a little bit and just focused on her work, and I tried to at least grieve somehow. Not ignore it. Like I said, the doing things with ribbon, but the big thing for me was a Facebook post. I would do one a month on the anniversary of his passing. I just started at 1 month, and it just kept going through a year, and that was physically exhausting. It was, you probably read it in 5 minutes, but it felt like it took 10 hours to do, and it probably took 10 minutes to write. It was easy to write because it just poured right out of your heart. And I normally didn't think I was that kind of person, but that has helped immensely to write about it, and just to read people just sharing, and how many people are in the same boat. That helped a lot, to talk to people that had the same situation, had a son or daughter that passed, and you don't wish for that, but it was sure helpful when you talk to people. And I guess what I learned from that is how differently people grieve. It's, I might have found someone that was almost in the exact same situation, but they were very bitter. They were mad at whoever gave them the drugs, not that that's wrong. They should be, but I was like, nothing I can do now. It's, let's move on. And like you said, a good word was honor. That's a big thing for me, is to honor Jayson somehow. I couldn't fix it. Like you said, a guy, you're trying to fix everything. Didn't fix it. You feel like you really failed, but now I found that it's very helpful to just move on and do what I can, and hopefully help someone else and help myself at the same time, as well as my family.
Absolutely. And I can see that and I can hear that. And I actually am very excited to get this out because, as you know, I'm getting out there more with groups and that type of thing on Facebook and social media, just because I just want to be able to, like you, just be able to share with others. And because I know people grieve so differently, and it breaks my heart when I see those that are just they're so deep in their own depression and their deep grief, and not feeling like there's any light anywhere. And I'm so glad to hear about your spiritual family and that spiritual faith, because I know that that's extremely important. If we think that this is all there is, well, then of course it's going to be very, very difficult to be able to see any future, because it's like, well, if this is all there is, where when we have a spiritual component, we know that there's something beyond this earthly existence, and that Jayson's life, his living and his death are actually what is helping other people. And it doesn't sound right or fair or any of that kind of thing, absolutely not. But to honor and be able to share your story, I think, is so deeply important. And that's what I've seen for people that are able to, and I don't even want to call it successfully grieve. It's just to not have that failed grief, because we know that failed grief, when we're not dealing with it, can create so many things. It can break up families and relationships. It can cause, very serious physical issues. Certainly the emotional pieces. Some people even start losing their jobs and everything, because it's just like they just can't handle it. And so if we can get out there and share and be able to give hope. And I coined the phrase, and you might have seen that in my book too, but I coined this a long time ago, HOPE, as the acronym for honoring our purpose every day. And that may be something very small one day, and it could be something huge, like getting out there on public stages and talking about opioid addictions and what's out there, right?
Yeah, that's a big goal of mine. I did speak at a college before COVID came, right before. So I had the opportunity to do it for a couple of nursing classes, and it was such a nice platform, and um, I was exhausted when I was done, but I was so glad I did it, and people were so interested in it. In their class, you could tell they knew about opioids, what they did, the chemistry of it, but they didn't really see the personal side that much and what they actually do to people. And yeah, that's my hope, to continue to do that.
That is so beautiful, so beautiful. So anything else that you want to share with people, just any insight, any piece of wisdom as a dad who's still fairly new at this, it's been a year since the physical death. You had several years before that of, a lot of grieving in and out. Anything at all that you would like to share?
I would say grieving it's hard work. But I think part of it is you have to let yourself go down in the dumps a little bit once in a while. Just feel it and feel bad. I mean, it's not bad to say what could I have done better and that kind of thing. But you got to limit your time at doing that. It's you can't just ignore it. You have to go there. For me personally, you have to go there and say, man, did I really screw this up? And maybe I did, but then come back and say, well, what can you do now? And again, the grieving part, like I said, it's physical, it's mental, it's one of my worries when he first passed was, am I going to forget about him? I feel really bad. I almost want to feel this bad all the time. And yeah, there's no worries there. It doesn't go away. And as I'm sure I can see myself 10 years from now feeling the same way, and that's okay. It's okay. And I'm sure in 10 years, we probably would have made a lot of progress too, and things that would have made Jayson proud.
Absolutely. And I'm glad that you brought that up. I actually have a friend of mine, her son died at the age of 21. His was a military incident, but it's 11 years now. And she did pretty darn good for the first 10. she kept busier than heck. She was busy, 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 creating awareness, getting up on stages and talking, has a benefit in his honor where she raises funds, for veterans, and, a big component about talking about organ donation, that type of thing. And I just knew, having known her, that I could just sense that there was a bit of a crash going to be coming. And year 10 was really, really tough for her because of that fear of forgetting. Like, oh my gosh, it's been 10 years. And that was just a huge struggle. Like, I've been doing all this stuff. And we had lots of wonderful conversations about that because she needed to go in deep. She had to go in deep that year 10. That was important to her in order to be able to successfully get out of that. So I appreciate what you're saying is, it's okay. All feelings are okay. And I think people sometimes feel ashamed, or, that they shoulda, coulda, woulda, and shouldn't be thinking that. And, these bad thoughts shouldn't be in their mind. You can't process if you're not thinking about it. And so, again, I love the wisdom that you have, is you're just not staying in it for too long. So do you have one little piece of what works for you to, when you're going into that darkness, so to speak, and into that deep sadness or anger, or whatever the emotion is, what is one thing that helps to bring you out of it? Is there something that you do physically or mentally to kind of pull that trigger to help you get moving?
Physically, if I'm really down, I like to go for a walk and just kind of enjoy nature and kind of see what God created, and just know that Jayson's watching me walk. He knows what I'm doing. He knows I'm thinking of him. And, because usually when I'm down there, it's more of a guilty thing. It's, what could I have done better? But, in the end, in my mind, I know that, there's nothing more I probably could have done, or nothing more we could have done. And that he's good with it. He's, might have left on a bad note, but, he's in the best place he can be right now. And it just helps me to see nature and just and see his face in clouds and everything. That cardinal that just flew by, that was Jayson looking, things like that it's healing for me.
You'll see I have a cardinal right up above me.
Yeah.
Got a picture of my head. That and
Yeah,
butterflies, are so that is so awesome. And I agree, nature is so healing in so many ways. And I really encourage people to, if you're feeling like that, just stepping outside the door, opening up the window and listening to a bird sing, and just breathing. Breathing is just like so very, very important. So Jay, I really appreciate, because I know it's not easy to talk about this. And some days it's probably easier than other days. And I am, as always, so honored when someone like you is sharing your story, sharing your son, because I feel like your child is just right here. Jayson's right here. I felt that since I think one of your first posts early on, just a beautiful child who absolutely is so happy that you are honoring him, remembering him, and serving to help others. And so that's really a beautiful thing. So thank you so much. I'm so honored that you spent some time with me this morning, and with all the people who will be watching this in the future.
Yeah, thank you, Pat. And like I said, it helps to talk through this thing. It's another healing day for me. I appreciate it.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, just hang on. I'm going to say goodbye to everybody here and turn off the recording. Have a wonderful week, everybody. Hi there. Thank you for stopping by our Healing Family Grief channel, where grief can transform into peace, purpose, and even joy. That is the intention. So as host of the Healing Family Grief channel, my goal is to provide insight, inspiration, and hope for people who are grieving a deep loss, or for the people who want to provide support for those who are struggling on their grief journey. If you like what you hear, please like us, give us a thumbs up, and subscribe to our channel to hear more. Also, feel free to share any episodes that you feel could be helpful to someone you know. For more information about the Confident Grief Coach School, or to find a grief coach, or perhaps to order one of my free ebooks, please check out our website at www.healingfamilygrief.com.